Hello and welcome to another podcast episode of Women Lifting Women, a podcast dedicated to female voices in leadership in tech. Today we're having a really special guest, and I'm really excited to have her join the podcast. And this is the incendiary Sachini, and I'll let Sachini introduce herself.
I'm not even sure I know what incendiary means, but I love
to Google it. I had to it's been full of fire.
I don't think it's ever been called incendiary before, but
incendiary. I was like, I need the right adjective to
I'm it's positive. I have no idea, but we'll find out. But hi, I'm Sachini Imbuldeniya. I am the co-founder and CEO of creative agency House of Oddities.
And House of Oddities is such a, I've seen glimpses into your world, and I'm so curious because everything I've seen so far has been so incredible. And I remember meeting you before we started the company, and kind of this journey has been such an inspiration. And I would love to start there. So House of Oddities has been built on this belief, if I got it right, that basically difference make it different, and how you approach things is important. What did you have to unlearn to build an agency around this particular idea, which is a bit unique?
To unlearn, that's a very interesting question. I guess I've spent, if we start with difference makes a difference, I've spent a lot of my career feeling a bit like I accidentally walked into the wrong party, and I guess no one had the heart to tell me that I was there. So I always kind of felt like I didn't fit in, is what I'm trying to say. And I think the places that I worked, they were full of people who all pretty much looked the same, sounded the same, had similar interests, and were probably on the same family WhatsApp group because nepotism is quite rife in our industry. And it was a bit like a kind of weird corporate cloning experiment. A lot of Oxbridge educated, Eton educated, it was very similar types of people doing similar types of things, I guess, even in their spare time. And I come from a very working class background, and I remember once I was sat there in my best high street jumper, which someone mistook for Miu Miu, and I sort of nodded along yeah, of course it's Miu Miu, but I actually had no idea what they were talking about because I didn't know who you were at that time, right? I was very working class, and I think that was pretty much my survival strategy for a while. It was smile, nod, don't get found out because I'm clearly not meant to be here. And I think for a long time, I thought the goal was to blend in, and I thought it was to be less me and more them. And as I got more senior, I'd say, in my career, I realized that the things that I was trying to tone down were actually probably the most valuable things that I had. I'm a woman of color, as you can see. I'm from a working class background. I have a disability. I'm basically a full house in the underrepresented category. And that meant that I saw the world differently. I could connect with audiences that others couldn't connect with. And I could do it with real authenticity and not just guesswork. And I think that shift in thinking is what House of Oddities is built on. I think instead of hiring sameness, that we're a house of oddities, right? We actively build our teams with as many different perspectives as possible, because that for us is where the magic happens. Better ideas, better work, much wider reach come from different lived experiences, different perspectives, different outlooks on the world. And to come back to your original question, which is what I had to unlearn, I would say probably one of the biggest things was my cynicism. I spent a long time believing that this is how things were and that the status quo would never change. And obviously some of it still hasn't, but I think eventually I realized that it's never going to change unless I start changing it myself. And I believed that you had to be this polished, quiet, sort of unquestioning, slightly diluted version of yourself to succeed. And House of Oddities, for me, is proof that you don't have to do that. So,
yeah, I would have to agree in terms of one, learning to embrace yourself. Like a best version, I can be I can also be a lot. So I get,
Yeah, I think
I
it's just
had
you
it.
feel like to fit in, you have to be like everybody else, and that's just weird. Like it's a weird thing to think, but I think I I mean, my longer backstories in a nutshell is that because I come from a South Asian family, I was kind of forced to study science and kind of either become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or the kind of typical jobs, I guess, that you would. And part of that was because I came from a working class background. I think my mum just wanted me to have a job that was security and obviously guaranteed income, and art was a bit vague for her. So I think when I kind of rebelled and went into the creative field, I just felt like I had to succeed and prove to her and my family that you could make a living out of a creative industry job. So part of that fitting in, I guess, was because I was so terrified to lose the job, because obviously like it was so hard to get it in the first place, that it was kind of easier to try and blend in than be myself, because I thought if I be myself, then what if I get fired? And then, you know, like the kind of family politics of, we told you shouldn't have gone down the art route, you know, like science is safety, and you know, so there's that too.
I mean, I can understand, mostly because of, like, I think my husband went to a very similar route, and he got a bachelor because of his Asian family, got a bachelor in engineering, and walked out after day 5 in the middle of the day out of their job, and we're like, no. But there was, of course, the pressure of like, I need to now prove it to, like, there is money in film.
I can have a successful career in the creative industry, because I think, you know, from my mum's world, and this is not her fault, it's the way she's been brought up, is that, you know, what kind of jobs could you get in the field of art? Because it is, I think even today, like there's so many jobs in the creative industries that younger kids like who are studying don't really realize exist, because nobody tells them about them, right? So whereas other jobs like becoming a doctor, becoming a lawyer, becoming an accountant, they're very talked about careers, right, that everybody knows. So it's kind of very tangible. You go down that route, you get a job, you get a salary. My mum said to me once, like, what are you going to do with art? Are you going to sit on the street and paint? Because I think in her mind, it's like, what else could you do with it? So a lot of it was proving to my family that I could make a career. But because of that, it was the fear of losing the job. So it did just feel like I'd rather just blend in, you know, and that would keep my safety of the job, I guess.
I mean, and that's in every situation. I think life has circumstances, and we're all feeling that way at some point or another. Or like sometimes the battles are also really hard, and you're just like, well, it's just okay. I just learned myself that every time I actually let shit go, it comes to bite me in the ass. So I never do anymore. Because I'm like, you're going to blame me, like I'm going to get blamed for this either way. I might as well argue with you up front, and like not like, okay, I just gave up, and like it just came back to haunt me. It's like, I knew this will come back. So at least that's what constantly motivates me. I'm like, if I know it's going to go wrong, at least I have to try to fight for something. I don't think I know how to not question. I have a hard time with like just sit quiet and not quite. I don't think I'm very good at that.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely not good at it anymore, but I think I used to be really good at it. I used to be very good at just keeping my head down and just like trying to be invisible, I guess, and you know, just to kind of get through life, you know, and not be found out. I always felt like I didn't fit in, so I think the whole thing was trying to not be found out that I didn't fit in. So blending in was like the option at the time, completely the wrong option, but it took a long time for me to learn that.
How do you think that fit into the way that you are leading a team now? I'm going to change my original question and like kind of go into like a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, like it's really interesting. So I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I am one of the 0.01% of women that own a creative agent, women of color, sorry, that own a creative agency. And that is a wild and sort of crazy stat in itself that needs to change. And last month, I won CEO of the Year at Campaign Inspiring Women Awards, which, you know, I was shortlisted with some really incredible leaders from this industry, and that, like, winning that was huge. But what was more interesting was what happened in the weeks after winning that award. I was basically inundated with messages from women of color across the industry, women that I'd never met before, and they were all saying like a very similar kind of thing, and that was that they were thinking about leaving this industry because it is just really tough, to be a woman. It's even tougher to be a woman of color. It's very toxic at times, and it's a hard place to navigate. And we all witnessed the speed of the rollback on DEI initiatives from companies like across the board as soon as Trump came into power. And, they were saying that like seeing me win that award gave them hope that positive change is happening and that this industry can do better. And it's seeing that and realizing that, right? So, I mean, that is obviously a lot of pressure on me as an individual. But those messages were also so much more valuable than the actual award itself. And I think House of Oddities, like, it was born to reshape this industry for the better from within. And accolades like that kind of really help show that what we're doing is working. So I think, having visibility shows that it shows others that it's possible to kind of do things. It's possible to succeed in this space. And that 0.01% stat will never change if people don't have that hope and that confidence that, we can keep trying to shift the dial, and the dial is actually shifting. Even if it's shifting like a tiny bit at a time, it's still shifting, right? And I think, we were very fortunate to win gold at Campaign Agency of the Year 2 years in a row. We won bronze in the really big boy independent category and beat amazing agencies like Wyden and Kennedy. And on paper, it means that we're the third best indie agency in the UK, right? So I think, the more diversity that we have at the top, the better the work will be. And I think that's a fact that brands shouldn't ignore. So in terms of leading a team, I think, it's just making sure that we're bringing as many different perspectives into the room. Like, diversity comes in all shapes, forms and sizes, right? But I've just been in a lot of environments where there was just too much sameness, too much sameness. And I think it is really good to just draw in those perspectives. And I think I really encourage that in my team. 100% of my team currently come from at least one of the most underrepresented groups, 70% of women. And I think it's really important to do that and to show that you can be successful as well, right?
And how do you make sure, one room, so many different opinions, how do you kind of manage that? Because it's both chaotic and energetic and sometimes tense and sometimes frustrating and sometimes a lot of things. How do you navigate? You captain this really wild ship.
I mean, we're House of Oddities. We're a home for outsiders, misfits, weirdos, people that don't feel like they necessarily fit into the traditional agency model. And I think, we try to create a culture where people do feel safe and obviously, because we're a creative agency, we also want them to feel brave, that they can come up with anything and do anything. And I think when it comes to safety, everybody needs to feel like they're protected, that they have that safe space, and that most importantly, they can be themselves. I've met too many people, weirdly, that I know outside of work, and inside of work, there'll be a different persona to their outside of work persona. And I just find that really strange, especially in corporate environments, and also not necessarily in the creative industry, but some of my friends in the finance sector, for example, they act a certain way in their job and then a different way in their personal life. And I feel like you should just be you, and you should embrace being you. And I guess it's acknowledging different personality types. I work with a lot of introverted people who like sitting with their headphones on. They like being quiet in a corner, and that's fine. And, other people love having debates and they love challenging the existing norms or perceptions, and that's also okay. And I think, different types of people have different belief systems, different ways of expressing themselves, different hills that they're willing to die on. Do you know what I mean? Different ways of different levels of tolerance, or certain behaviors and personality types. And I think when you create a place that allows people to be themselves and express those personalities and those quirks that they have, there are a few ground rules that you need to establish. And I think we always say that, we encourage arguments and debates. In a creative agency, I think you have to have that. I've worked in a lot of places that really want kind of yes people. They just want people that, just do as they're told. Whereas in a creative agency, I want people to challenge, but it always has to be about making the work better. So it's argue as much as you like, as long as it's about making the work better, right? Don't argue unless, we're trying to do something to elevate what we're creating. And I guess we always try and make a safe space for people to interact in brainstorms or in meetings or workshops. like we try and adapt to people's personality types to make them feel comfortable. Some people don't like being put on the spot to answer come up with an idea there and then. They want to go away and think about it, and that's also okay. So you can be in the brainstorm, you don't have to say anything. Email us later if you come up with any ideas. Like, you don't feel the pressure to do it there and then. And I think that's it. It's like not a one size fits none type of mentality, right? And I guess the most important thing on top of that is just like a total respect for people and not titles. So like our weird USP, I don't know if you know this, is that none of our senior team come from like traditional creative agency backgrounds. So even though we are a creative agency, none of us come from the traditional creative agency world. We all come from editorial. So as a result, we basically really question the kind of traditional ways of doing things, and we bring a very different lens to the creative agency landscape. So we know like that good ideas can come from anyone. So we don't have this hierarchical thing where like in some agencies, the ECD is the fountain of all knowledge and everyone has to bow down to their wisdom. We like just get the whole team involved in idea sessions, whether they have creative in their title or not. And it's really great because great ideas can come from absolutely anywhere, and great ideas, like sparks of ideas, can come from anywhere and anyone. And it really allows for like a non-conventional way of thinking, and it enables people to come up with, I guess, like radical new ways of doing things.
Yeah, I mean, I think me and Zaim had this conversation yesterday. Had to come up with multiple ideas for like, I think a toilet paper. Something about the toilet paper ad, and we were debating the toilet paper and like motivation. So I always have the perspective of like, okay, so who will buy this, and why in their life, why this one, what is their motivation, what is their life? I feel like I'm trying to act this person and putting myself in their shoes. I'm like, but why would they do this? But we were like, he was like, oh, 6 ideas, there's so many ideas. And I was like, well, like sometimes the best ideas come from a bad idea. So like you need to sometimes just throw bad ideas, and something will come on top of that.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing of like, there are no bad ideas. Obviously there are bad ideas, but it's that thing of making people feel comfortable to be like, it doesn't matter how stupid it sounds. It doesn't matter if it, just say it, because there might be like a little nugget of a spark in that idea that overall might sound pretty terrible, but there's something in it that you can then work from to build something better. So I think genuinely making people feel like comfortable to just say what you want, just say anything, it's fine, right?
I think that's that together with leveraging AI, but don't become too much like a parakeet of AI. I always say, like, the one thing AI never knows how to do is give a tagline or name anything. It's just really it's really bad at it. I do see this shift, especially in spaces like Number 8 is an AI company, and obviously we do leverage AI in everything, and like in other spaces with Zaim and his work, and I see AI coming up and more, but there is something about this human ingenuity. Yeah, it's like this randomness.
Yeah, nothing's going to beat the human imagination. Like, AI is amazing for so many things. You can streamline processes. You can do amazing, like, you can visualize things that client can't imagine just to get your idea across. If it's something that doesn't exist in the world, there's loads and loads of ways of how it's a benefit. But I think fundamentally, like, nothing will ever be able to beat the way humans think and the kind of batshit ways they kind of mesh things together and create something new out of it.
And I think, like, if you want to do your research, bring it and help you think through it. But that's new thing that comes on top of it. That's where you start questioning it also, like, are you with it? And though I do, really funny story. I was going to the bathroom in the house, and I was like, here Zaim talks to this woman. And I'm like, it's late at night, and Zaim is talking to a woman late at night in our bedroom. It's like, what the bloody hell is he doing? And the thing is, I go to the bedroom, and I go, like, sometimes, like, are you talking to chat?
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Having a conversation with ChatGPT. I didn't even think he was cheating or anything. I was like, what are you doing? And now he's cheating on chat with Claude.
That's the thing, like, we've kind of started to build a reliance on it, right? And that's a slightly scary thing when you become too reliant on it, that you're not using your own brain as well.
exactly. But
Like,
that's
if you
where
can't
you
connect,
have
it's
to.
up to ChatGPT or Claude or whoever it is. And I think that's the danger, is like not using your brain enough because you're just reliant on tools to do the thinking for you.
I completely agree, and I think that it's always with a balance because you constantly have to check them.
Yes.
Have make a lot of mistakes. They make a lot of like weird, pick up a lot of weird stuff.
That they do 100%. Yeah.
And if you think you cannot QA, like think of it as an intern, you have to QA everything they do.
Yeah.
Even worse. So it's really a constant process, even though I obviously do use it for efficiency and other things. And like Zane does create with it as well. So there is a world to explore there, but it's a balance, as you said.
Absolutely a balance. Yeah.
I'm going to circle to some of the weird. I'm going to diverge to go back to because you already mentioned it. So I'm like, there's nothing like you won the CEO of the year. And while obviously running an agency can be quite challenging and quite hard, what keeps you going through like a really like the tough days, the challenging days, the days that you don't want to wake up or get up or work or anything of that?
I mean, you're right. I definitely say that it looks much more glamorous on social media than it is in reality, for sure. Yeah, it's tough. Like I remember talking with friends who owned their own businesses before we launched House of Oddities, and they tried to tell me, they tried to warn me. I think anyone that's had their own business will tell you how difficult it really is. And don't get me wrong, like I believe them, but I also do love a challenge, right? And I think having previously worked in some very large corporate kind of toxic organizations, I also, like, as hard as I knew it was going to be, and maybe I didn't realize how actually hard it was going to be, but I knew it would be hard. I also felt really passionately about trying to change the industry for the better, because like I love my job. I've always loved my job, and I'm very fortunate to do something that I love. But I don't think I could stay in organizations like that anymore, where change would just never happen, and you kind of constantly felt like you're hitting your head against a brick wall, and like you take 2 steps forward and then 20 steps back. And I felt like, despite how hard I know it's going to be, if I don't do something about it, nothing's ever going to change. So, and that goes to the work too, right? Like changing the industry from the in is one thing, but also creating better work as a result is another thing. And I think I've worked, throughout my career, I've had some great leaders, but I've also worked with some other senior leaders who ran their teams through a culture of fear, and the output was never as good as a result. And, I wanted to show that you can make great work, but you can also be nice people, and it doesn't have to be like one or the other. And I feel like a lot of people previously that I've worked with and generally in the industry have this kind of old school mentality where, like, you have to be an asshole in a senior leadership in order to get a good output. And it doesn't make sense. Like, a lot of people say that CEOs are the most people that are most likely to be psychopaths, I guess they say, because of that brutality of being cutthroat. And I'm a bit like, I don't know, like I kind of want to prove that you can run a successful business and just be nice. And maybe I'm wrong. maybe it'll fail.
I think you're wrong.
Maybe it'll fail, but like, there is a mentality with CEOs. The reason they say they're the most likely candidates to be psychopaths is because you have to have that cutthroat mentality to make brutal decisions, right? And that's not like I can't make brutal decisions, but I think I can do them in kind ways, if they have to be done. If a business decision needs to be made, sure. And I think, there obviously are tough days, and being a founder can also get very lonely. I've always been part of a team, and now I'm not in the team. I'm obviously the owner, which is different. Like, I'm very close to my team, but there is a slight differentiation, I guess. So I've actively really tried to like join networks with other founders and like-minded individuals who are on similar journeys. So I guess we can share stories and we can advise each other. And I think that I used to find the creative agency world very cliquey and like very hard to penetrate as someone that always felt like a bit of an outsider and a misfit. And whilst there are, I guess, still plenty of places that still make me feel like that, there are also a lot of amazing people that, want to connect, that want to support, that want to help. And I guess it's like finding those pockets of magic and those selfless humans. Like I met someone for coffee yesterday who was just like, I want to help you with new business and I don't want anything returned. And I was like, what? That's why. Do you know? And because she was another woman of color in the industry that used to have an agency back in the day, and she was like, I want to take people up with me on the ladder. I don't want to just like climb the ladder and then take the ladder away from everyone. Yeah. And I just thought that was amazing. I was just like, so what do you need? And she was like, nothing. And I was like, you're going to help me for nothing? This is really suspicious. But you know, the fact that people like that exist is the kind of hope that gets me going through those tougher days, I guess. And you know, people that kind of were willing to lift you up and just not expect anything in return is kind of amazing. And obviously I will always give back in return, but the fact that people aren't expecting anything, it just shows that, you know, there is positivity and, you know, good humans like still do exist. I think it also helps that I feel in my gut that we are actually doing something important here and something that feels right. And I think, you know, the holding company, the network model for agencies, I think it's really broken. I just think more and more clients are recognizing that the more savvy, scrappy indie agencies like House of Oddities are much faster, are much more agile. Like, you know, we're not bound by these corporate structures that kill off creativity fundamentally. And we're also a lot more invested in their business and their brands because we are smaller, we pay attention. You're not one of 1,000 other brands. And, you know, if you don't have big budgets, we'll give you the Z team. Like, that's not how we operate. We put dedication and care into every single client that we work with. And we really try and learn and understand their brands in as much detail as possible, right?
I completely agree. And like, I think that's what makes startup and the same as indie, like small business, more efficient and more often a better fit because that's yeah, it's personal. You know exactly who you're talking to because the team is small also. Like, it's like you're getting drowned out. Like, I always say someone, oh, we met someone, people tell me, we met someone at number 8. I was like, yeah, it's probably Abby or myself because we're the welcoming committee. So the probability of you meeting someone else is just like, I know who you met. Like, there is no, oh, this will go through someone else's like hand or like anything. I will know, we will pay attention, we will notice, and you will have our full attention all the time because that's the way it operates, and that's the advantage of a smaller team where we all like notice what's going on. I will say though that because of this podcast, I had the fortune, I was so fortunate to speak to so many female founders and female leaders. So what I've seen, especially by female CEOs, that kindness is something that can run a successful business, and that this is something that women at least talk about quite often, and how important it is when they think about leadership. While I don't do this podcast with men, so I cannot compare like men versus women, but I can say that women do think about kindness and think about like lifting their team and about the team being able to communicate or express themselves and show up for them as a driver. And as a personal thing, I always worked the hardest when someone believed in me and I wanted to show up for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was invested in their journey, and I was invested in them and making them look good and just making sure, because they believed in me and I felt obligated to that faith. And more than anything else, more than anything monetary, I felt personally obligated.
Yeah, I completely agree. Whenever I've worked with really good, nice senior leaders, like I'm happy to go the extra mile. I'm happy to do everything possible to make this as amazing as possible. But if I've ever been run by a culture of, someone through a culture of fear, I'm like, I just want to get out of here as quick as humanly possible. So I don't understand the logic of, getting a better output from running teams through a culture of fear. To me, it makes no sense, and it's not my experience, but I've seen lots of people who do it.
I think that's just the belief that, people will be afraid, like, this is respect. This is like what respect looks like. This is how they will deliver. They need to know that they're ready. Like, they need to fear for their lives kind of situation. I don't know.
I don't know all industries, and maybe in some industries that works, but I feel like in the creative industry that just can't work, because you can't get the best out of people if they're scared. Like, you're not going to get the best ideas, the best creativity, the best, the best work. If people are terrified of you, like that just doesn't, it's just not okay.
I think even with business, like in the end of the day, it's all like so many times joining a startup is it's about creative solutions.
Yes.
It's creative solutions, and like I spend so much time just like thinking through, like trying to imagine new ideas. There's so much, maybe not creativity in that sense, but just creative problem solving, creative data, creative, a whole range of things that I've spent trying to do and convince people. And maybe I'm just like, I have also a very, like, I'm just not very scared. Um, but I just like, I'm just gonna put my idea here, and that's because of where I worked before, or where I started my career. When one is an aggressive type of communication,
Yes.
So the style of communication is one very aggressive. Second, you talk on top of each other, so you have to fight for the right to speak, and you kind of learn to make yourself heard, which I'm trying to unlearn a bit. So like talking about unlearn, I'm like, I'm to be slightly less of such an aggressive speaker, and listen, give more silence and be comfortable with it. But I still believe, like, regardless, I still believe that kindness and that mentality helps across board and helps the wider group of people.
And I think empathy too. I think like having empathy, which I think, I mean, I might be putting my foot in it here, but I think women have a lot more of it than men. But I think females just naturally have more empathy, and I think that is a really good leadership trait.
I mean, it's just like, I think maybe it's either biologically programmed or socially conditioned to understand and try to understand and come from a place of understanding. And also just not being triggered by things like tears. Like my team cried in front of me before. I'm like, they're like, I'm sorry. Like, no, it's all right. I'm like, it's okay. We don't need to apologize.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's all fine. We cry. It's okay.
Exactly. We need to normalize crying more.
I do agree. But I do think that if some of like other people, like if my team would do it in front of some other people, like they will be extremely uncomfortable. And it's a personal thing. They will just be personally uncomfortable. So it's just how comfortable you are with that emotion, and like like it's just fine. And the moment because women are just more comfortable in those situations, it just makes it normal and less of a big deal.
Yeah, but I also think being vulnerable is, I think, an important leadership trait too. I think like everybody tries too much to have this like guard up and kind of shield on, and I'm in control, and I know and I think the biggest thing I learned from working in quite large corporations was that most of the senior people at the top didn't have a clue what they were doing. Like there's so many people in senior roles, and I'm like, they're getting paid these massive salaries, and I'm like, what do they even do? Like they kind of hide in the shadows because they're these massive corporations. And I think there's an assumption that if you're at the top, you know everything, and we're all learning every day. Like we've all got more and more and more to learn, and I think it's really important to show vulnerability and not be like this kind of really senior figure at the top that kind of knows everything.
I think I heard in this podcast recently, and someone was talking about leadership, and he said there's three things that I want to hear from a leader for me to believe in them. First, thank you, sorry, and I don't know, what do you think?
Exactly that. Yeah, like I like to think I have answers to lots of things, but definitely not everything. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of things where I also don't know, and I think that's the same with anybody in any leadership position. Some just don't admit it, and I think admitting it is important.
But I mean, we hire experts. Hire experts. The goal is to hire experts because we believe in them and what they tell us. So one, listen to what your experts tell you, and second, like they know better because you hire them because they know better. Like that's kind of the point. But yeah, I agree. So we're very much in agreement. Leading to my final and signature question of your personal superpower. What do you think? What do you feel is that thing that gives you that unique edge that makes you?
So I feel like in the context of House of Oddities, I would say that I probably only discovered my superpower when we founded the agency. And I think it's not necessarily creativity or being a woman of color, or even my sort of different lived experiences. I think my superpower is probably the naivety of the industry, I guess, because like I mentioned before, like I've never worked a single day in traditional creative agency world. And I think because I come from editorial, I feel like that is a weird superpower for House of Oddities. I think there's no better boot camp for building up speed and agility and resilience and empathy. And, you know, I really learned how to move fast and how to fight for my ideas when I believed in them, and how to challenge briefs and assumptions, and how to build better briefs. And I guess I learned how to pivot with deadlines just hours away because the turnaround's so fast. And I guess, like, above all, how to get an instinctive understanding of audiences and different communities, and like to know what, like, not just what they want, but I guess what audiences actually need, right? And I think the difference with editorial is just really understanding what audiences need. It's like editorial is a tough environment, and it's obviously changed so much over the last 20 years with like changes to publishing models and to the news cycle, and obviously the rise of the internet and social and video and AI and fragmented channels and TV and streaming and creator culture, and, you know, and all of that stuff, right? And I think having to navigate all of that on tight budgets and even tighter deadlines, it really means that when I entered the unknown kind of creative agency world, I was genuinely surprised at just how slow it was to innovate, and like, and you know, it didn't move as fast as I felt like clients wanted. And I think there's still so many old practices and processes that exist, and so many broken models in the kind of traditional agency world. And I think because my senior team come from editorial, we naturally question how everything is done. And so far, I think that means we've developed like better, more impactful ideas for clients, and provided a real point of difference for the agency, because we bring that fresh lens and that fresh perspective, I guess. And I feel like it also means that I came into a new industry not knowing the answers, because I wasn't institutionalized into it like from an early age, and not really knowing how things are supposed to work. And that means that I've been much more open and honest with people in the industry and with clients, and, you know, not approaching things with like ego and swagger, but like just genuine curiosity. And I think so far it seems to have really helped, you know, turbocharge our success, I guess, because we genuinely question everything. So
do you have an example? I'm just really curious.
So I directed a TVC a couple of years ago, and I brought on a really amazing EP who's been in the industry for a long time, 20 plus years, has worked on like 450 TVCs, and she was incredible. And then when she was doing stuff, I was very much like, why are you doing it like that? And I was like, what if you did it like this, or like this, and like this? And she was very much like, what are you talking about? Like, this is the way. And I was like, who says it's the way? Like, what do you mean it's the way, right? So I was like, but, you know, and obviously because that's the only way she has known how to do something for 25 years, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly you're like, okay, but what if we did this, and then we did this, and then it would be better, but it would also be faster, and it would be cheaper, but the results would also be better or as good or whatever it was. And then she was just confused. She was just like, you can't change the way, it's the way, right? And it's that thing. So like a lot of the time when I work with anyone that's spent their entire career in a traditional creative agency, they can be very tunnel vision about the way to get from A to B. Whereas because we're coming at it not having been in that industry, we're like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why does it take a massive agency X million pounds, X hundreds of people, and X amount of months to ultimately make a 60-second film? Like, we're confused by that, right? Because it's not the way we've ever worked. So I think because of that, we just question the way the traditional model exists, and we do it our own way. And I guess that's another reason we're called House of Oddities, right? We believe in difference makes a difference, but that's difference in all forms. And it's even like different ways of creating stuff, right? Because there isn't just one way to create something, there's a million ways, but people have been taught that you have to go down this particular way, and we've just learned that you don't, like, you really don't.
I mean, I think that a lot of the time when I think about the same with commercials specifically, or making things, because we do things also independent and we do different like format, or you have to be so creative, like you have to really be scrappy and like really figure out how you're going to do something.
And especially nowadays, the way that audiences are consuming content and the speed that they're consuming it in, like we really have to adapt. Like we can't use a traditional old model. It's never going to work because everything around us is adapting and changing at speed. So we also need to adapt and change at speed. So they can't just be one way. There has to be a million ways, you know?
I mean, and like, it's just, I like what I found with creative agencies specifically, you said stuck in their way. I find like voiceovers is something that gets stuck. Someone wrote it. They get really emotional attached to the voiceover, and like it's a stupid voiceover. Like you just change it. It doesn't make any sense. We can't film this. Like it's physically not allowed to film. Like we can't. It's not possible. And it just gets this really formal way of approving, and they get really upset about it, and I'm like, you're way too emotionally attached to that really poorly written voiceover.
I think it's the people that challenge are the ones that succeed, right? Like I know this is an example that's used all the time, but I think Liquid Death is a good example purely because ultimately they are selling water. It is water. It is a product that has been sold for a very long time, and all of the other water brands that exist on the market look identical. They are identical. They are the same clear bottle with a hint of blue with some mountains. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the same thing. And then you look at them challenging the market and how successful they are, and it works, right? It's fundamentally water, but they've spun the narrative on how water should be. And I think that's the thing. I think like challenging the norm and challenging what people expect and challenging the traditional ways, you know, who decided that water had to look like that? But someone did. And from that moment, it's just ended up looking the same. Like, again, like the people I used to work with, a homogenous clone of the same thing, right? And I just, to me, it makes no sense. I think standing out, doing something different, being brave, challenging the industry norms is the way to shake things up. It's the way to make a difference. It's a way to get attention.
I think that I would just say, like, for me, it's about doing it smart and understanding the user's motivation. So I think there's someone who is just now doing a new type of bandage for adults. So like fun adult like bandages. Because they were like, there is the one for kids, and then there is the boring one that is always like looks the same. And we need like party for adult, like fun bandages, but adults version. And for me, if you understand that your use case and you understand your audience, then you can truly innovate in a way that will also be super successful. I don't believe in innovation for the sake of innovation, meaning don't reinvent a wheel if if it's really working and like there is no benefit for it. But if you truly understand your audience and you truly understand their pain or their life, and I think that comes from my own background because I learned behavioral. I mean, I was working in a non-for-profit in behavioral research before, joining Number 8, and that was kind of like an in-between different things. And what you do there is mostly trying to figure out how to change people's behavior because you want them to eat less meat or to take care of animals more or to like you want to change their life. And to change someone's behavior, you really have to live in their shoes and to try to understand why they do what they do and what will make them make a different choice. I think of advertisement as the same thing. You're just trying to get them to choose your product, and that's a change in behavior. And I approach it, at least from my side, I'm just doing we mostly do audience targeting. So like if I'm thinking of audiences and my responsibility with Number 8, but that's still with the hat I always wear of like when I recommend an audience and why this audience for this brand and what's the story and what's the motivation. That's always there. And when we talk creative, and that's kind of like my other life, just by extension, and because of my other side of my life, it's still. And when I write, the biggest thing is why this person is this way, and I think an actor said it, and when they were trying to play this villain and they couldn't, the main thing was trying to find some why they are the way they are and really empathize with this villain, because you can never play a good villain without empathy.
Yeah, you have to fully put yourself into their shoes, right?
Yeah. And in that, really fun, and everyone should put themselves in a villain's shoes sometimes to really understand how it all feels there. But thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really enjoyed myself. Hope you as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. And for this episode and many, many more, please go to www.womenliftingwomen.il. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all next time.